Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever actually stopped to think about the ultimate mystery of biology? It's kind of a profound reality that literally no living organism on Earth is immortal. Every single biological machine eventually wears down. But somehow, against that relentless tide of mortality, life has just continuously thrived on this planet for billions of years. So, how exactly does life pull off this massive evolutionary victory? Well, today we are going to unpack the fascinating biological engineering behind animal reproduction, and we'll discover exactly how nature ensures the show goes on. To do that, we're going to cover 5 main areas today. We'll start with the secret to life, then look at viviparous, the live bearers, followed by oviparous, the egg layers. After that, we'll dive into the magic of metamorphosis, and finally, we'll wrap up with the art of parental care. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the secret to life. Let's establish the fundamental rules of the game here. As we just mentioned, no animal or plant can live forever. So how does life actually continue? Since every single organism eventually faces its end, the survival of any species relies on a brilliant evolutionary workaround. Basically, since you can't live forever, you have to leave behind a piece of yourself instead. Okay, let's really dive into this. That workaround is reproduction. But rather than just thinking of it as some dry textbook process where a living thing produces another organism of its own kind, I want you to think of reproduction as nature's ultimate biological insurance policy. It's the core mechanism that ensures a genetic lineage doesn't just, stop with one generation. And because nature absolutely thrives on diversity, animals have evolved wildly different, highly specialized strategies to pull off this one vital task. So, the animal kingdom basically splits into 2 competing strategies for this evolutionary continuity. On one side, we have viviparous animals. These are the ones that give birth to live young. This strategy is all about extreme safety, keeping that developing embryo completely protected internally. But on the flip side, we have oviparous animals, which are the ones that lay eggs. This is a totally different evolutionary trade-off. Here, the critical early development happens outside the mother's body in a protected casing, which gives the mother way more independence. So 2 entirely different paths achieving the exact same goal. Which brings us nicely to section 2, viviparous, the live bearers. Let's shift our focus to a group that probably feels a bit more familiar to us, the mammals. The sheer biological scale of live-bearing mammals is pretty staggering when you think about it. The strategy of internal gestation scales all the way up to the absolute giants, the largest aquatic mammal, the mighty blue whale, and the largest terrestrial mammal, the elephant. Yet, it also works perfectly for the Etruscan pygmy shrew, which is literally the smallest mammal on Earth. Oh, and then we have the echidna, the smallest egg-laying mammal. We're actually going to circle back to that wild evolutionary anomaly in just a second. Now, because of this highly successful strategy of carrying young internally and feeding them milk, mammals basically untethered themselves from needing highly specific, vulnerable breeding grounds. Having this portable, internal life support system allowed them to conquer literally every type of habitat on Earth. Think about it. We have aerial mammals taking to the skies, like bats, aquatic mammals ruling the oceans, like whales and dolphins, arboreal mammals mastering the treetops, and terrestrial mammals dominating the plains and forests. It's everywhere. But, evolution isn't some strict rule book. It's a relentless series of successful mutations and wild biological experiments. Entered the duck-billed platypus and the echidna. These guys are the ultimate rule breakers. They possess mammalian traits like they have fur and they feed their young with milk, but they lay eggs. They're just bizarre, wonderful subversions of the whole viviparous strategy, proving that nature will absolutely find a loophole if it offers a survival advantage. All right, moving on to section 3. Oviparous, the egg layers. Let's step out of the mammalian realm and into the vast, highly engineered world of animals that rely on eggs. 1.5 kilograms. That is the weight of an ostrich egg, the largest laid by any living animal today. To give you a stunning contrast, the tiniest egg out there belongs to the bee hummingbird, and it weighs a mere half a gram. But here's the crazy part. Despite this immense difference in physical mass, both of these structures serve the exact same miraculous function. Let's actually break down the brilliant biological engineering hidden inside a bird egg, because it is essentially an independent, highly efficient life support pod. The shell, which is made of hard calcium carbonate, isn't just a solid wall. It's a breathable membrane with microscopic pores that perfectly manage gas exchange, letting air and moisture right in. Then you have the albumin, or the egg white, which provides a critical suspension of proteins and water. And finally, the yolk. That is an incredibly dense energy reservoir, packed with the exact perfect ratio of vitamins, minerals, and fats required to construct a living, breathing organism entirely from scratch. Actually, if you want to understand the fluid dynamics inside this embryonic environment, try this at home. Spin a raw egg and a hard-boiled egg on a flat table. The raw egg, it's going to wobble and spin super sluggishly because the internal fluids, the albumin and yolk, are sloshing around, fighting the momentum. But the boiled egg gives you a beautifully smooth, fast spin because the interior has solidified into a fixed center of gravity. It's a fantastic, hands-on way to conceptualize the dynamic, liquid ecosystem that a baby bird actually develops inside of. Watching this biological engineering play out chronologically is just phenomenal. Take a standard chicken. We start with a static fertilized egg that requires 21 days of precise thermal regulation. We call that incubation. From that static pod emerges a chick, completely dependent, but rapidly growing feathers over a month. Then this transitions into the pullet stage. This is a period of intense energy transformation, kind of like their awkward, patchy, feathered adolescent phase, where they rapidly build bone and muscle mass. And finally, they mature into adult hens or roosters, biologically prepared to initiate the entire cycle all over again. Now for section 4, the magic of metamorphosis. Because some egg layers take survival to a whole different level with literal biological shapeshifting. So metamorphosis is the process of transformation from a larva to a very different-looking adult stage. But I want to be clear here. This isn't just an aesthetic change. It is a brilliant evolutionary strategy designed to prevent adults and their own offspring from competing for the exact same food sources. By drastically redesigning the animal's body plan halfway through its life, nature ensures the species can exploit entirely different ecological niches. Just trace the journey of a butterfly. It begins as a tiny egg, hatching into a caterpillar. And that caterpillar is basically a biological eating machine whose sole purpose is to consume biomass and molt. But the pupa stage, that is where the true marvel happens. This is not just some inactive cocoon. Inside that casing, the insect's body literally digests itself. It breaks down into a cellular soup to rebuild an entirely new anatomical structure from scratch. It emerges as an adult butterfly equipped for flight. And amazingly, once it leaves that pupa, it never grows another millimeter in size. Mind-blowing, right? Amphibians, like frogs, possess their own profound ecological mastery. They begin as jelly-covered spawn in shallow water, hatching into tadpoles that are essentially fish. They navigate with tails and breathe through aquatic gills. But during their metamorphosis, they don't just change shape. They completely switch out their respiratory and locomotive systems. They absorb their tails, they grow legs, and they develop lungs for extracting oxygen from the air. In a single lifetime, they conquer 2 entirely separate ecosystems, transitioning perfectly from water to land. And that leads us to our final section, Part 5, the arts of parental care. Let's look at the vastly different evolutionary strategies regarding how animals allocate resources to their offspring after birth. In biology, this often boils down to a stark contrast between quality and quantity. On one end, we see a high investment strategy. Mammals and birds spend an enormous amount of metabolic energy gestating, incubating, and feeding a very small number of young. This ensures a high survival rate for those few offspring. But on the other end, many frogs, fishes, and reptiles utilize a zero-care strategy. They just flood the environment with hundreds or thousands of eggs to overwhelm predators. It's a brutal numbers game where they invest zero parental energy, betting that sheer probability will allow at least a few to survive. But nature always loves to throw a curveball. You might assume a giant, cold-blooded apex predator would fall right into that zero-care category, right? Well, crocodiles actually meticulously dig shallow pits to incubate their eggs in warm sand. And even more astonishing, when those eggs hatch, the fearsome mother crocodile gently gathers those fragile little hatchlings into her massive tooth-filled jaws and safely transports them to the water. It is a stunning, unexpected display of high-investment maternal care from an ancient reptile. So wrapping this all up, from the resource-heavy, high-investment mammalian mothers to the shape-shifting amphibians playing a calculated evolutionary numbers game, which survival strategy do you think is the ultimate winner? It's completely fascinating to realize that despite these radically different approaches to biological engineering and resource allocation, every single one of them is wildly successful at ensuring the continuity of life on our planet. Thanks for exploring the brilliant mechanics of nature with me.